How many of you here tonight want to make a difference in the world? Most of the room. I found myself in the same place a number of years ago. And what I realized that I had to do is I had to go out and find the people that were making a difference in the world, find out what they were doing, and emulate it. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is what I've noticed are the weeds that they pulled out of their life to make their life as such that they were able to make that difference in the world. So the first one is the poor me weed. So I've been lucky enough, I consider myself humbled to have been able to interview at this point 2,500 high achievers. So that's quite a bit of research about what the high achievers do. And when I say high achievers, I don't mean from a money perspective. I mean the people that are influencing other people, impacting other lives, and changing the world. So what I discovered is that a lot of the people that are changing the world don't have the poor me weed. In other words, they have an attitude as such that, you know what, I'm going to go out and make this happen, and I'm not going to feel sorry for myself or feel that I can't do this because. And to give you a prime example, I was interviewing a guy named Patrick Henry Hughes, and Patrick Henry is up on the screen. Patrick Henry Hughes was born with no eyes. He can't bend his arms or legs fully. That's the first part of his story. Today, Patrick Henry Hughes is a graduate of Louisville University. He graduated with honors. He's been on Oprah. He's been on Ellen. He has a best-selling book called I Am Potential. You may have seen him in a commercial with his father pushing him around in his wheelchair. He was in the Louisville marching band. And Patrick Henry Hughes, when I look at him and most of the people that I talk to that are making a difference, the differentiator between them and a lot of other people is they don't have that poor me weed. And to give you an example from my interview with Patrick, because I think it speaks volumes, is when I was talking to him, my first question was, Patrick, what was it like being born with a disability? Did that factor into who you became today? And he said, Corey, let me correct you right there before we go any further. I was not born with a disability. I said, what do you mean? He said, I was born with an ability. I said, do explain. He said, I will. He said, I was born with an ability because most people have to judge people by the color of their skin, what they look like on the outside, the type of clothes they wear, what background they come from, how much money they seem to have. I don't have that luxury. I can only judge the person inside. This was Patrick Henry Hughes' attitude. And as I continued interviewing person after person after person, I noticed that they came from tough backgrounds. They came from backgrounds of abuse. They came from backgrounds where they were born with no money. They were born with no advantages that we would look at and call advantages. And yet, over and over again, they rise to the top because they realized they had to pull out that one weed in their life. And the one weed was, oh me, that my poor attitude. Poor me, I can't do it because. So the first weed I discovered is these people realized they had to get the right attitude before anything else happened. The second weed relates to us completely today. How many people would agree we have a lot of information to sort through today as a society? What I feel today, and I've called it, what I think we're in right now is an information-heavy, wisdom-light society. What do I mean by that? I don't know if you've ever heard the statistic. I heard on talk radio recently that all the information online in the world today will double in 12 months. All the information in the world will double in 12 months. I don't know if that statistic is true or not. I just know I'm overwhelmed with a lot of information. But what I've discovered is the high achievers, the people that are making the difference, have realized that they need to find the sources they need to learn from so they can sort through all of that information and get to the information that's going to make a difference in their life. In other words, we're all hit with a lot of information. We're all hit with social media. How many people in the room here are on social media? Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, something. We were told earlier, tweet if you want to. So we're dealing and getting hit with a lot of information, and what I've discovered that the high achievers do is that they find a way to sort through that information. They get the sources that they say, this is the person that's going to give me access to the information a lot quicker, so they don't have to sort through all the stuff that everybody else is sorting through. A great example would be a TED video. You know, using that as your source, saying, I want to learn from, and going to that source and learning from that source rather than trying to decipher all this information you're getting hit with every day online. So the second weed that I find that people have found a way to avoid and pull out of their life is the too much information weed. They find a way to get the information they need and move on. You know, if you want to use the example of going on Facebook today, you go on Facebook today. Are you overwhelmed often? Are you reading a whole bunch of status updates? Wouldn't it be great if you could go on to Facebook and then be off in 10 minutes and say, feel satisfied? That I got everything I need to get? That's what these people have figured out a way to do. And how do they do it? They pick their sources and they go to those sources. They figured out a way to make technology work for them. Obviously, I'm not up here using a clicker saying we shouldn't use technology. But what I am saying is they found a way to not be solely dependent on the technology. Now, I'm going to give you a statistic that I've learned myself that you guys aren't going to want to hear because it relates to using our smartphones. And nobody likes their identity taken away or even threatened. So I don't want to be attacked afterward, but I have to share this. What I discovered, and the reason that the gentleman up on the screen is up there right now, is because I interviewed these 2,500 high achievers. And as I was going through and studying them, I wanted to say, what did they do that is uncommon? What are they doing that I noticed not everybody is doing? It actually surprised me because it wasn't in the questions that I found this out. What they did differently is whenever I did an interview with them, not once did they say to me, I need to leave my phone on because I might have a call from home. Not once did I hear a phone buzz. Not once did they say, I might have to just send this text before we start the interview. Not once did they say, I have a sick family member at home, so I have to leave the phone on. And assumably when they got home, not once did they say, Corey might text me, so I got to leave my phone on. They were all in with me. So are they dependent on technology? Absolutely. Are they going to go out after that interview? And as soon as they leave my site, are they going to start checking their phone? Absolutely. But the one difference that I noticed is they don't do it when they're with me. So from my perspective, it's like it didn't exist. Can we say that's not the norm? Is it not the norm whenever we see people walking down the street bumping into garbage cans? Because they haven't lifted their head up yet from their phone or their device or tablet, whatever it might be? Do I use them? Yes, I have two. I have two smartphones. I'm not going to knock technology. I use my phone in my car when I'm driving around on my dash, listening to interviews through video. Yes, I use technology. But again, what I've learned from these high achievers is they find a way to be all in with whoever they're at the time, so then they can be all in with their phone later on. Even if they love their phone more, they find a way to break away for a few minutes. So the weed they're able to pull out is the dependency on technology. The other weeds. What does this relate to? Has anybody ever had anybody in their life that was a downer, a negative person? Most of the people in the room. What I'd love to ask, and there's not enough time today, is how many people still have those people in their life? Because what I will tell you, and you don't want to hear this, but if you add the numbers up, what I would tell you is that if you have more of those people in your life than positive people, you are never going to make the difference in the world you could make if you pull those weeds out of your life. Am I saying get rid of your mother if your mother's the negative weed? No, I am not. My mother's still in my life, even if she has a bad day. But what I am saying is it can't hurt to sit down and just add up the weeds. Do you have 12 positive people in your life and 6 negative? Guess what? You have more positive and negative, you're on the right path. But if you add those numbers up, say you put a positive beside the people in your life and you add the negatives, and you only have 1 positive and 11 or 12 negative, you got some work to do. You got some weeding to do. So why do I have the people I have up on the screen there? Well, I spent a number of years in the world of stand-up comedy. Not for the faint at heart. There's a joke that says, and it's supposed to be a true statistic, that the number one fear in the world above death is public speaking. Stand-up comedy is a few levels above that. I started performing stand-up comedy in 2002. I will tell you that my very first night I went up into the stage and told the best joke that I've ever told in my life. To dead silence. Only discovered that I hadn't even turned the mic on yet. What I learned from these people up on the screen, some of the greatest comics that I've ever been lucky enough to share the bill with. You may know some of the faces. They've been on a lot of I won't go through the names of them, but a lot of the popular comedy shows. And these people, I started out with them. And what they were able to do, you see the picture of the manhole up there, what they were able to do is show me where the manhole was that they had fallen down so that Corey could jump over that manhole and not fall down it too. In other words, by taking out some of the weeds that were taking my life in the wrong direction, I was able to make room for some of the weeds, some of the people that were able to actually take me down the right path and teach me lessons that I hadn't learned otherwise. So what message am I sharing? Remove some of the negative weeds so you can make room for more positive influence in your life, and it'll make all the difference in the world. And so finally, number 5, the I can't weed. And I think this is the hardest one and the biggest challenge because it's the one we tell ourselves. I can't do it. But I've seen some amazing things after all these interviews in my life, and I thought I'd share one story that's close to home to me because I watched it and witnessed it in my life, and it's the reason that I'm standing here before you today. You know, I shared the too much information weed earlier. I will tell you and share with you, which I don't share that often, I read my first book when I was 27 years old. I'd never read a book up until that point. And the person that influenced my life and made all the difference in my life, the person who gave me the guts to finally read that book, which shouldn't have been a fear, but it was for me, was my grandfather. And my grandfather was a carpenter with a grade 3 education. And whenever I was 7 years old, I watched my grandfather build a fiberglass space shuttle replica. But I had that in. But it was to scale, which is the important thing to note there. There was a place called the Great Island Adventure Park, and it was the shuttle that went there. And my grandfather, with a grade 3 education, was asked if he would consider building the shuttle. And what he found out is numbers of carpenters had said no, with much more experience, with grade 12, which carpentry courses. And so this grade 3 education carpenter with a bag of nails and a hammer started working on a fiberglass space shuttle. And he said to my mother at the time, how do you build something out of fiberglass? That was his starting level. The moral of the story is that shuttle is still standing today, 30-some years later. So you better believe he helped me pick out the I can't weed in my life whenever I watched that carpenter with a grade 3 education tackle that project and succeed. So I've seen amazing things happen. And I was watching on the newscast and they were saying, this ordinary carpenter, and this is where I got this term, with a bag of nails and a hammer. And I was 7 years old and I screamed at the screen, he's no ordinary carpenter. He's my grandfather. And it's because of what he did for my life and how he influenced my life. So what I've learned, again, is that if you can find a way to pull some of these weeds from your life, and again, when I look at the high achievers I've talked to, these are the 5 most common weeds that they were able to pull from their life. If you can find a way to pull these weeds out of your life, you're going to have a much better chance of making that difference in the world that you said that you wanted to make earlier on. So what is the takeaway? It's time to start pulling the weeds. Thank you guys so much.